Oh, welcome. All right, we've got some Sally, welcome. Joining us from DC, Nicole in San Diego. Thanks for calling in. And Emily, you're in Minnesota. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Raj, great to see that you're tuning in. And Bundy, Susan, thank you. It's so great to see so many familiar names. And of course, Adam is here. We've got Sarah calling in from Women for Conservation. What a great turnout. All right, this makes me very excited to get started, which it looks like admissions has slowed, so I will go ahead and jump in. Now, we were supposed to have a third panelist on the call today, but they were unfortunately able to join us. That is Dr. Gladys Kalmaziku-Soka. So today we are joined by two of our partners who are just amazing and can easily fill up the time. So joining us today, we will first hear from Dr. Marnie LaFleur, who founded Lemur Love after witnessing the deforestation and poaching of wild ring-tailed lemurs. In addition to being a member of renowned primate specialist groups, Dr. Marnie is also an associate professor at the University of San Diego, where she teaches biological anthropology. Oh, amazing. It looks like Dr. Gladys was able to join us. I see them on the call right now. I'll give them a minute to get settled, but we'll still start off with hearing from Dr. Marnie first, if you'd like to put your slides up. And then after Dr. Marnie, we will hear from Dr. Gladys. So glad you were able to join us. Dr. Gladys is founder and CEO of Conservation Through Public Health. They are an award-winning NGO that uses a One Health approach to protect endangered mountain gorillas and other wildlife. Then our final global partner who is on the call with us today is Isabella Cortez, Director of Women for Conservation, a nonprofit that empowers women in rural communities around key biodiversity areas. She recently graduated with a master's in natural resource conservation from the University of Kent. After we hear a brief overview of each partner's organization, we will pivot to a Q&A session facilitated by our senior analyst, Hannah Evans. And Hannah will ask our panelists to delve deeper into their work and their passion for forest conservation and reproductive rights. So if you have any questions for our speakers, please drop those in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen. And after the event, we will follow up with a recording of this presentation and access to the chat box discussion. Now, those are all the housekeeping items for me. I will send it over to you, Dr. Marnie, to start us off.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. Okay, so I will get started here. First, I just thought I'd introduce myself a little bit more. Some of you I already know, most of you probably not, but here we go. I am, the first thing that you'll notice is all of these critters. I'm really a lifelong animal lover, which led me to being interested in studying animals as a career. So as Stephanie said, I'm a professor at the University of San Diego. I also, the main focus of my studies are lemurs, and I founded and directed Lemur Love. I am a pet mom and lifelong animal enthusiast, and I also really, really am very interested in food. I know we all are interested in food, of course, but I'm definitely interested in food. And right now I'm in Los Angeles, so I'm taking part in all kinds of very interesting tacos. Okay, so the first is looking at Lemur Love's mission. Our mission is to protect lemurs, to empower women, and to further science. So I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail to explain on why each of these are important to us, and then I'll pivot to talking a little bit about some of our programs. So the first is to protect lemurs. And you might ask, why lemurs? Why would this organization choose to spend all of this time focused on this one group of animals? And I'll give you a few reasons. One is that they are a very diverse group of primates. They're only found on the island of Madagascar. So there's 111 species recognized of lemurs, and all of these are found in Madagascar. And unfortunately, these are thought to be the most endangered group of mammals on Earth. So greater than 96%, that's more than 100 species, are listed by CITES, meaning that they are at risk of imminent extinction. Lemurs play important regenerative roles in their forest homes. So they are both seed dispersers and pollinators. And I think it's becoming much more common now for us, for humans, to recognize that we really need these forests. We need forest cover on our planet in order for our lives to, in order to thrive ourselves. So the important role that they play is really something that we focus on. And something that you may or may not know is that all lemurs have female dominance. This is really rare in mammals. Only lemurs and two other species have strict female dominance. And so this is what really drew me to lemurs, why I was very interested in studying them as a species or as a group of species. So that's why lemurs. Now, why do we focus on women? Um, it's known that gender equality is necessary for sustainable development. So if we want to implement sustainable development, we have to work towards gender equity. And we also know that female autonomy is necessary for biodiversity conservation. And so many studies have shown that if women have access to reproductive care and family planning, they choose to have choose to have fewer children, and they space them out more. And this really results in a better quality of life for their children and for themselves. So this is a really important aspect of biodiversity conservation, is making sure that women have the ability to control their own bodies. And I'll say that Madagascar is much of Madagascar has quite a traditional society where it is quite patriarchal. So we are working within this framework. We know it's really important to have gender equality and for women to have control of their own bodies, yet we're in a society that hasn't valued that as much as we would hope. And then last, why science? Why do we use science? That's because empirical evidence is necessary for documenting and understanding change. So when we're looking at climate change, change in forest cover, change in crop availability, change in animal behavior, we really need a baseline so that we can compare it to. And this is how we can make decisions about our own effectiveness. Is what we're doing working? Do we need to pivot and do something different? So this is why science is very important to our organization. Next are our programs. So I'll talk just a little bit about both forests, about rural areas, and then about urban areas. And this is all the lemurs I'm showing are from one of three groups that I've studied pretty intensely since 2008. So here they are going into a cave, having a little drink of water. So forests. When we're thinking about how can we protect forests, the strategy that Lemur Love has gone with is to really concentrate our efforts in one location. So this is in southwestern Madagascar. It is the dry region. So even though we're celebrating rainforests, I'm sneaking in a little bit of dry forest cover here. And looking at how can we best protect that. And what we've found is, and not just us, what others have also found, is that when there's presence, so that could be government, that could be NGO, it could be civil society, it could be researchers, when there is presence in a location, there's a greater chance that that location will remain. So simply being present, simply having rangers, going out into the forest, following those animals around, studying what's going on, really does help to protect the forest. And then next to our forest is where rural people live. So outside of cities, rural areas in Madagascar. So what we need to know is, in order for these people that are living right next to the forest, day in, day out, how can we improve their lives such that they don't need to rely on the forest resources to survive? And so we found the most effective way to figure that out is just to ask. So what can we do to make your life easier, to improve your well-being, to decrease your reliance on forest resources? And here's a picture of the village nearest the park. So just so you know, there's no electricity, there's no sanitation. It's a very rustic setting, let's say. And what women tell us from these villages is that what they want most is food security. And so we work on small scale projects that enable them to earn income despite if it's a good year or a bad year, so that they have some sort of way to feed their families, regardless of what the conditions are. And last is the urban individuals. So these are people that live in cities in Madagascar, not next to parks. And so how can we best support growing this next generation of conservationists? And so we have a fellowship program that it's pretty intensive, lasts at least a year, wherein Malagasy, mostly women, but some men too, scientists take their own research that they already have and turn that into a scientific publication. And this is, there's a gap between higher education in Madagascar and higher education in the global north and west. So individuals that are trained in Madagascar, these individuals are really the best suited to be carrying out conservation in their own country. They understand their own culture better than anybody from outside ever will. So it's really important that they have the tools to be able to get grants, publish their work, communicate with other researchers. And so this fellowship program really helps to increase the capacity of these young, upcoming future conservationists. And this is actually, I mean, all of the aspects are important, but I really believe in the future of these primarily young women. And so we also try to work within a framework that is fair, that takes different perspectives. We really want to uplift. So, for example, when we go to the field, we are all equal. So it doesn't matter if you are employed as the camp dishwasher or if you are the lead veterinarian. We all have access to the same things. We all, every one of our voices counts. That's just the foundation for how we work, is that we want everybody to feel equal and included. And okay, so just wrapping up, I just want to say that Lemur Love is seeking new board members. So we particularly are looking for someone with financial expertise, and then someone who can help with development and fundraising. So if you know of someone that is in a good position to join our board, please do let me know. Also, we are a small nonprofit, so we are always seeking financial support. And if you can also just follow us. We're most active on Facebook and Instagram, so it would be lovely if you followed us there. Thank you very much. I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marnie. It was wonderful to hear a little bit about Lemur Love, and I look forward to the Q&A session when we get to learn a little bit more. Up next, we're actually going to hear from Isabella Cortez of Women for Conservation, and then we will wrap up the presentations with Dr. Gladys. We'll just give a minute to get these slides up. Looking good so far. I think the play button or that. Yeah, there we go. Looks good.
Hello. Hello, nice to meet everybody. My name is Isabela, and I am so excited to be on a call with Sara Ines Lara, which is my mother, and she's the founder of the organization. I'm also founder, but she really had to go through the most difficult part of starting up the programs in a time where this was unheard of. And then Emily, who is our director of philanthropy and has really been excellent at helping us through all of this process, and is in the picture to my right, and Sara Ines is at the picture on my left. And then to her left is Kelly Julio Donao, which is our field coordinator, who has battled with different challenges in the last couple of months And it's been extremely difficult, but thanks to her support, we've been able to continue. So here we go. So our vision is we are a group of women and individuals who want to support biodiversity through empowering women and communities to prevent extinction in areas that are very affected, especially in rural areas that have little access to information, to education, and opportunities. So, Women for Conservation empowers women by respecting and supporting them through different processes, such as family planning, environmental education, conservation training, and we, of course, try to include as many different communities as possible. So a little bit about Women for Conservation and who we are. It starts as a story with a woman in Cauca, the southwestern region of Colombia, who is my grandmother in this picture at the bottom. And she was a woman that supported many different people and communities throughout Cauca, as it was her job to go through different villages and work with a regional corporation to help constructing different projects. And Cauca is a region that is extremely hard hit by conflict. So Colombia has been going through conflict for the past 50, 60 years. And in that period, there was a lot of poverty and difficulties, which we can still see today. But this generation had to fight with many different traumas and abuse that was prevalent throughout different communities of different ethnic backgrounds and races. And unfortunately, many of these areas, the people that were most affected have always been the women in these communities. So my abuela, my grandmother, was a fearless woman who, though she had many difficulties within her own household, decided to try and help other women through these situations. And then she instilled this information and this knowledge and her empathetic nature into Sara, who is my mother. And Sara began as a young individual to question many of the different things happening throughout her society in Cauca, and she began as an an industrial engineer, which is completely different from conservation. And through that journey of healing traumas and healing many different wounds that were inflicted by her own family and the society in which she came from, she began to go into conservation because she wanted to make a difference in the world and stop so much destruction. So through nature and through species conservation, she also started to heal herself. And then at that point, I come along when she was very young. She had me when she was very young. And that's why we look like sisters. And that's also why we do family planning, because my mother lived firsthand the difficulties of being a single mother in Colombia, coming from a rural background. So we are built on 3 generations of women who are leading different forms of movements. For example, Sara Inés is director of Fundación Pro Aves, and I have led Fundación or Women for Conservation in a way that ties in art and conservation. So my story is that growing up through all of these different adversities and scenarios, I took art as a way to catalyze all of this energy. So these paintings are my paintings, and I use painting, music, dance, and different cultural events to be able to reach out to communities and to touch people's souls, to get people to really act on all of these different important things, such as deforestation and women's rights. So our strategic approach has 3 pillars, and we begin with nature conservation. We work around some of the most important key biodiversity areas in Colombia and for the world. including La Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, which has the highest level of endemism in the planet, and also the Amazon and Choco. So we work around these areas that have endangered species that have threats. And by working in these hotspots, we work in the amortiguamiento, the communities of amortiguamiento is the buffer zones, to be able to expand the conservations as different corridors. So, for example, in nature conservation, we focus on women's areas as well, so their own lands and how they can protect their region, not just the nature reserve, because that is a real issue, that there are nature reserves as islands, as biodiversity islands, and the rest around them have just become deserted and deforested. Along with that, we have a PHE approach, which we believe that by having healthy communities, we have habitats. So we provide at a community level family planning, and we integrate family planning and health, gender equality into conservation by giving access to sexual education, implants, 3 to 5 year implants, also tubal ligations, which are a permanent method, as well as vasectomies, which have been from the past years very successful and has been a process to get men on board as well, because we want our organization and our mission not just to focus on women, but also to integrate men as important actors for conservation, as well as sustainable livelihoods. So sustainable livelihoods is a very important component, because we need to emphasize that conservation can't be done without the socioeconomic component. So for example, this is a necklace from the Embera community, and these necklaces form as a way for these women to be able to provide for their families while not going into destructive practices such as mining and timber. So by promoting products that are able to be made by the women and commercialized either locally or regionally, women are given an alternative and financial independence, which is extremely, extremely important in a machista society where men are the sole providers for their family and women depend mostly on the man's earnings. Though they may be able to administer it in some ways, they still depend quite prevalently on their husbands, which can be an issue if they are living through trauma or abuse. These are our active project sites. Now, this can fluctuate based on if we take up different project sites in different areas. So at the moment we have 12, and El Dorado, #1, is my favorite, which is in the top. And this is La Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta. And this is where I live and work full time. Currently, I'm in the city. I'm in Bogota. So if you hear honking, I apologize. But I'm usually in La Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta, which is one of the most important biodiversity areas in the world. And then we, of course, work in Amazonia, which is extremely important with different programs, especially women in science, which we've done some very beautiful scholarships for 5 researchers, as well as the rest of these areas that have important species. So these are all of the very important species that we work to conserve that are all either critically endangered or vulnerable, and they are endemic or they are emblematic species. So a little bit about my work personally. So our organization is quite small, but we embark a lot. And I think Emily or my mother can say that we are literally running around all the time, doing many different things. And we have many partners. But this is where I'm really touched, because this is my area in La Sierra. So Palmor, Sierra Nevada, is the capital of this massive mountain, which is the highest coastal mountain on the earth. It goes from 0 to 5,700 meters, and it has many different communities and quite rich in cultural diversity, especially in languages. And there's Wiwa people, Kogi people, Arhuaco people, and Canquamos. So Palmor is an area where all of these different communities in some way or form, either commercially or culturally, merge. So one of the main reasons why we work here is because this is one of the highest conflict regions of La Sierra Nevada and is currently in active combat. So our impact in Colombia is growing thanks to our partnership with Population Connection, which has been so important to this entire process. And we've been able to do family planning, introductions, implants, vasectomies, 46 vasectomies, which before this partnership was impossible. Because we've been able to do much outreach and education. And then tubal ligations, of course, are very important for young girls that are, still studying and that perhaps do not want to have children until they finish. But also we have a lot of instances where we work with girls that are below the age of 15 that already have one child, and women my age that are 25 and older that are mother of 5 and 6. So this is a challenge going into these communities and talking to the people, especially getting people to feel comfortable and gain trust with us. So it's been a process with our coordinators and with our team on the ground. We tried and do as much outreach as possible, but also building that trust takes time. So these numbers may not look like a lot, but it is a lot of work for us, and we take it day by day. So for example, in our Palmord brigade, in our first Palmord brigade that I was able to go to, and we received actually women that are from the Kogi community. So she is a Kogi indigenous woman. And the difficulty here is that there's obviously cultural customs that we have to respect. So indigenous women have much different, I think, stigmatization, but also they have a different perspective and also religious aspect of family planning. But it is important to consider that we still need to work in these regions because many young women are having children without any prenatal or postnatal care. And also they're having children in a very continual form, like year after year. So by going to this community, we were able to do 35 different implants, and 7 of them were Kogi women, which was groundbreaking, and it was history for us. Also, another historic moment for Women for Conservation has been the vasectomies in El Carmen de Atrato in Chocó, in the region where this necklace is from. And in Chocó is very impressive because this is also an area that has a high religious context, but this religious context is more of like Catholic. So obviously Catholicism and Christianity and different religions have perspectives on family planning, which can greatly influence the way that we implement them. But because we were able to work with a nurse who has a lot of experience in this region, Lucy Buitrago, she was able to get men on board. And then once one group of men had their vasectomies, they were thrilled and were telling people that yes, this is something that we can do. So our programs start slow because of the building of trust, but then once we are able to show people that we deliver on time, that we do our brigades very meticulously, that everything is done professionally, especially with our partners Pro Familia, people are thrilled. So this group had to go 5 hours into a different city and then do their vasectomies and come back, and we cover all of those costs. We cover transportation costs, we cover food costs, we cover hotels and taxis, and also valoración, I don't know the word right now, when you get the checkup before, and then any other costs associated. So the impact of Palmor, I'm very excited about this because I am here in this picture, and I was in this community just weeks before one of the most like shocking conflict events there, but we were able to make all of this happen regardless of what was happening in our surroundings, and things were getting pushed off and we were getting set back, but we were able to make it happen, and it was a miracle. The tubal legations, it took us so long to be able to get people and mobilize people because the communities where we work are extremely far from cities. So the tubal legations, the women were so patient, and when we were able to do it, everyone was extremely excited. And now we have a long list of people that want to perform or to do the brigade. So yes, we hope to be able to keep striving against all of these different challenges and adversities to be able to bring this kind of support to people. And so this is an example of Sara with Kogi women. And so she is one of the wives of the leaders. So the way that this happens is that we have to talk to the authorities of these different communities, and then they talk to the women and they tell the women, okay, you guys can go and do this if this is something that you would like to do. And so she convened the group of women, and we were able to do this. And this woman was they have to walk 4 or 5 hours a day to be able to go from one community to Palmor. So being able to do these types of brigades opens up an opportunity not just for family planning, but also to do a diagnostic and to talk to people and to understand what the different difficulties are in the region. And so each person that we are able to assist is opening up doors to how we can continue to work in these regions. And now we're gonna do some more projects with Kogis especially, and this is the program that I'm leading in that same community region around Palmor, which is this mural project. And also we're working with the Kogi leaders like Jose Nakugies, and I painted his father, which is one of the maximum spiritual authorities of the region. And we're working to conserve the paramo by bringing people from the paramo to different farms to be able to sustain themselves, because people are pushing higher and higher in the paramo or mountain region, and that deforestation is affecting this hummingbird. So I just wanted to thank everyone. I'm sure I went over time, but I'm so thankful for this opportunity. And I just want to call for action of spread the word, spread the message, spread our mission. If you have friends, tell them about Women for Conservation. You can talk to us on our website, on our Instagram, social media. And of course, we always want supporters and followers who are willing to help us get more speaking events. These speaking events help us so much to be able to get funding and also to grow our platform. And yes, of course, resources are great and we need funds, but we also need people. We need to spread this message. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Isabella. And we will wrap up presentations with Dr. Gladys. We'll just get those slides up on the screen if you have them, or if you'll just be speaking.
Okay, I do have them. Good evening, everybody. I'm speaking actually from Rainforest. We've just been training rangers, and we work very closely with park rangers, and that's why I was a little bit disorganized because the training started late. But thankfully, I finished my presentation there, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Population Connection, for inviting me for this webinar for World Rainforest Day. I've been working with I need to put it in presentation mode. Can you see it?
Looks great.
Okay, great. I'm actually at our gorilla conservation camp, and what you see around us is coffee beans, because we work with coffee farmers around the park to improve their livelihoods. And I'm glad that both presentations talked about livelihoods. Been working with mountain gorillas for almost 30 years. I started out as a vet student in 1994, and it's been quite a journey. So actually now when we had the training with the rangers, I was putting up photos of when we started training rangers like 35 years ago, and only 3 or 4 people there remember the people in the photo. So it's been going for a while, but it's brought so much, it's really helped to improve the well-being of the communities. And through our approach, you're also really improving their health, and they're having a more positive attitude towards conservation. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about it. And because of our One Health approach to conservation, that is improving the health of people, animals, and the environment together, we've been really honored to receive several awards, including from National Geographic, Ashoka, Sierra Club, the Edinburgh Medal, the Aldo Leopard and Mammo Society and Taubag Leadership Award. And I was very excited when, during the pandemic, I was selected to be among the members of the Scientific Advisory Group for the Origin of Novel Pathogens. But when we won a UNEP award in 2021, for our One Health approach to conservation, it was a Champion of the Earth Award in Science and Innovation. I really emphasized the fact that you need to work with local people, local champions. Even me, I'm a Ugandan, but where the gorillas are found is not where I'm from. But it's so important for us to empower people from where the wildlife is from, because they're going to become the future decision makers for their communities and countries. For example, in Uganda right now, there's a big debate and pressure to cut down prime forest, Bugoma Forest Reserve, which is a home to chimpanzees, to plant sugarcane. But if you have many people who are members of parliament who are already conservationists, then you don't have to worry about it. I was very excited last year to be among the BBC 100 women among the 28 climate pioneers ahead of COP28 for a One Health approach to conservation. We are having a lot of climate change in Uganda, just like in so many other places. And even here where there's a rainforest, which is a climate modulator, the seasons are becoming unpredictable. So it's really important that communities learn to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And I think family planning is a very good way for them to do it. And I started off, this is me at the age of 5 months, as the last born in a family of 6. In Uganda, 6 children per family was not considered unusual. It was probably considered an average family, maybe a bit small. But right now, Uganda has one of the highest population growth rates in the world at 3%, and we're encouraging people to have less than 4 children. Being the last born, my parents allowed me to do whatever I wanted, and that's how I ended up eventually becoming a wildlife vet, the first wildlife vet in Uganda. I started off by setting up a wildlife club in my high school in Uganda, and this made me want to become a vet who also works with wildlife, having worked with many pets at home. Because we went to the national park and there's very little wildlife. It had been poached through the bad governance in the Idi Amin era, and there was hardly any animals. You could even take walks in the park. You weren't worried about being eaten by leopards or lions. And I felt, why can't I be a vet who can bring back the wildlife? And that's when I got to hear about the mountain gorillas, found in only 2 populations in the world, the Virungas, which is the better well-known, discovered in early 1900s, and then Bwindi Impenetrable National Park population, which was discovered in 1987, but not habituated until 1993 for tourism. The threats to all the gorilla subspecies remain the same. And because disease was such a big threat, we share over 98% genetic material and can easily make each other sick. I was hired to be the first veterinarian for the Uganda Wildlife Authority when I finished my studies in the UK. And instead of the disease coming from tourists, which everybody was worried about, because gorilla tourism had just begun, and they were concerned that they could pick up a fatal flu or COVID-19 from the tourists, something like COVID-19. Instead, it was the local community that made the gorillas sick. And Bwindi is pretty unique because it's only 321 square kilometers, and it's a very hard edge between the community and the park. As soon as you arrive, suddenly it's the forest, and there's hardly any buffer zone. And this is because of high human population density of 300 people per square kilometer. And so I immediately realized that people were impacting the forest. Even as I started out as a vet student and later became Uganda's first wildlife vet, the first vet hired by the government to treat wildlife. But one of the first diseases we found was scabies skin disease, which came about because gorillas started to range outside the park to go into gardens, community gardens, to eat people's banana plants. And this was because they had now lost their fear of people, having been habituated for tourism. They found that they were now going back to ranging places they used to range before their habitat was cut. And they destroyed banana crops like this, upsetting the community. But they also picked up scabies because people put out scarecrows to chase away gorillas, baboons, and other wildlife. And that's how they ended up getting the scabies. Sadly, we lost this baby gorilla, but the rest of the group recovered when we treated them with ivermectin. And that made me start to think about the impact of human disease on the gorillas. And this is a gorilla with a rectal prolapse. Again, I wasn't sure if it was human-related or not, because this particular group also liked to range outside the park once they lost their fear of people. So I carried out this operation actually at the park edge, right near the park offices. She recovered from the operation, but we did wonder whether she picked up a human parasite that caused her to have a prolapse. So a few years later, we founded Conservation Through Public Health in 2003. And we founded it to keep the gorillas healthy and their habitat secure, the gorillas and other wildlife. In this forest, you don't only have gorillas, mountain gorillas, you also have elephants, chimpanzees, over 4 species of monkeys, over 200 species of butterfly, over 300 species of birds, pangolin, duiker, bush pig, and it's also a very important water catchment area. So when you maintain a forest like this one, you're modulating the climate, it's a water catchment area, and by protecting a charismatic species like the mountain gorilla, you're also protecting all other species in the forest. And ultimately, the community benefits from the water and from the tourism that comes out of mountain gorilla tourism. Conservation Through Public Health has 3 integrated programs: wildlife conservation, community health, and alternative livelihoods. And wildlife conservation has a focus on wildlife health. Community health has a One Health focus, and alternative livelihood started because we found out that many people are unhealthy because they're poor. So this happens a lot. Gorillas go into community gardens, they eat their banana plants. This really upsets people. They sometimes also pick up diseases from the local community. So one of the first programs was to build a field laboratory, which expanded. And we regularly examine fecal samples to test for pathogens that they could be sharing with people and livestock, and attend to the people, the livestock, and the gorillas. And a big component of our program is preventing disease between people and animals through behavior change. Developed these brochures actually when I was still working with the government. And we started off by training village health and conservation teams. They are actually community health workers trained to do conservation work. This particular lady is giving a talk in her community, a health talk about the importance of being healthy and hygienic, having the number of children you can manage so that you don't have to enter the forest to poach. And in 2007, we started off with 26 people like this going to the communities, reaching over 2,000 households. And this was typical. All of these are from the same family. Every year, women were having babies, and they really didn't want to have babies every year, but they just didn't have access to contraceptives. So the program has really grown. By the time we got to 2023, 15 years later, we're working with 270 village health and conservation teams, reaching over 7,000 households with 40,000 people in parishes where there's high human and gorilla conflict. So they refer people who are sick for infectious diseases. They really promote good hygiene and sanitation by getting people to adopt hand washing stations. They promote voluntary family planning, nutrition, sustainable agriculture, because it's a very steep area and people need to know how to cultivate. They report homes visited by gorillas. They increase awareness on zoonotic disease, and they tell people about the importance of the forest and the gorillas and how they can access ecotourism revenue from tourists who come. And I'm so glad that because our approach involves healthcare, we are engaging so many women in conservation of the forest. And so this lady, Rehema, she's one of our first volunteers. She's now mentoring these other 3 ladies. and she's doing a fantastic job giving people Depo-Provera injections. Our behavior change focuses on a shaming behavior tool, where we basically have the family that doesn't do things well, like this one. You know, they have like 9 kids, another one is on the way, and things are really difficult. Half the children are going to school, the other half are staying at home, because they'll tell us that we have 10 children, half are to go to school, the other half are to chase wildlife from the garden. And of course, the ones who chase wildlife from the garden will never have a future, because they'll never be able to get a job. They'll just have to enter the forest to survive, and live off the land, become peasants, and they'll have teenage pregnancies, and you never break the poverty cycle. So we got funding from USA to start off this program, where we added family planning to our One Health model. And then when the gorillas come out, instead of, they end up trying to chase them, and they end up having injuries. Gorillas have scratched people. Maybe there's zoonotic disease spreads, and it's really chaotic. But the family that has 4 children, which for this part of Uganda is pretty good, because most people are having 10 children. Then we said, okay, you have 4 children. They all go to school. When the gorillas come out, they call out the human gorilla conflict team to herd them back to the park. And later on, the boy becomes a ranger, the girl becomes a nurse. And of course, people would rather be the second family that planned, didn't have so many children, had the children they could manage, and had better outcomes. So this is Rehema giving a Depo-Provera shot to a lady, a woman who came to visit her in her home. We found that community-based Depo-Provera was better, because when they'd go to the hospital, they'd find an overworked nurse or midwife, and they'd end up conceiving. But if they can go to the next door neighbor's home and get an injection, then it's much easier. And through a partnership with FHI 360, we were able to really double the level of family planning, because most people started with pills. And once we started the depot, it doubled, and it's continued to grow. We've sustained them with group livelihood projects. They're not paid a salary, but they haven't dropped out for over 17 years, which is very exciting. 15 years later, with support from Population Connection, we continue to train more and more village health and conservation teams. And now it's upgraded to Cyanopress, which you could actually inject on your own, but they'd rather still go back to the volunteer who injects them. Hope has been doing this for over 15 years. She's one of our lead volunteers. And the women are really happy. And even without in between donor funding cycles, this has continued, because women are happier to have control over their bodies, and the men are able to balance the family budget. Because from the beginning, we started off doing couple peer education. And we're finding that over time, as community health is improving, gorillas are falling sick less often, and which is exciting. This was published in Frontiers in Public Health, and it's helping us to evaluate the impact of our community health programs while we protect the gorillas. Over time, we found that we've had an increase of women on family planning. We started off below the national average at 22%, and now we're above the national average in the first 2 parishes where we're working, which is very exciting. So we hope to reduce the family size from 7 to 4 in our area, which is exciting. Women are more involved in conservation and men in family planning. Gorillas are better protected in community land. Actually, you find that men are no longer beating their wives. Why aren't you having babies? In fact, they're supporting it, because now they're planning their families together. We've seen a 3 to 7-fold increase in homes with hand washing facilities, reduced outbreaks of scabies and giardia, which is very exciting. And we're excited also to have helped to contribute to the positive growth trend of the mountain gorilla population. When I first started working with them, there were only about 650, and now they've almost doubled to over 1,000. And we're so excited. And it's all a combination of factors: improved veterinary care, improved community engagement, less pressure on the forest, money from tourism is shared with the community. People are much more positive about the gorillas and much less likely to kill them or harm them if they find them in their gardens. And during COVID, we had to upgrade that everyone puts on a mask when they visit gorillas, because obviously they were most likely to pick up COVID from us, which they did in zoos, but not in the wild, thankfully. And again, we worked with the human health sector and added a logo of a gorilla, an image of a gorilla, and we continued to prevent spread of COVID among people and from people to gorillas using a One Health approach through education and testing people and gorillas. So we continue to work with the same village health and conservation teams and train the gorilla guardians in COVID mitigation. Sadly, we lost a male gorilla, a silverback male, leading one of the most popular groups in the southern sector by a hungry bushmeat poacher who was not hunting gorillas, but other animals, duiker and bush pig. And that's when we started to engage the women, the wives of the poachers, to urge, who said that they urged their husbands to enter the forest to get meat. So we realized how important it was to engage the women. So after checking on the group, they had really been disrupted by all of this. We found that we may likely have more poaching if we don't address hunger. During COVID, it was worse because the economy had gone down and people used to use tourism revenue to buy food. So we started to support them with fast-growing seedlings. And I'm glad that the Lima Love is doing the same. And so these women now have fast-growing seedlings, including the poacher's wife. And she's one of our beneficiaries. And she's, they're coping a lot better because now they have the money to buy other things. We also support the coffee farmers, as I mentioned. We give them a good price for good coffee so they don't have to enter the forest to poach. And during COVID, this really, really helped them because we're able to keep them out of the forest in the absence of tourism, because we could sell the coffee in America and other places. And Population Connection actually ordered a whole lot of coffee for the donors, which really helped to get the business going. So these are our lovely ladies who we work with. We love them. They really support our work, and it's a great partnership. We're expanding to other parishes around the park. And right now we have 429 people like that, reaching over 50,000 people in over 10,000 households. And we're seeing over time that there's an increase from red households, which have less than 4 ideal indicators, to green households, which have over 9 out of 12 indicators. We found a new way now of measuring impact. And family planning needs is a key impact that we're measuring on top of everything else that we're looking at. We're continuing with PHE advocacy like today in Uganda and around the world, and it's really picked up. The government now has a national PHE network, and we're excited to have made this possible through our advocacy efforts. I've written a book about my conservation and leadership journey shaped by One Health. It's a whole chapter about the importance of family planning and PHE, and I'm so excited that Population Connection featured it in one of the magazines. It's available in America, UK, and many countries around the world, in Uganda, South Africa, Kenya. And there's a lot about how we develop what we're doing and how family planning has really strengthened our One Health approach to conservation. We celebrated 20 years of conservation through public health last year. And it's very exciting. The next 20 years, we want to scale up to other habitats that have gorillas and critical wildlife, and also teach others to implement our approach in other places where we're not working. You can donate through our website, follow us on social media, and come and visit us at Bwindi and learn about our work, and visit the gorillas as well. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, everyone. That was really amazing just to get to hear from our global partners. Thank each of you so much for contributing your efforts to this day and for celebrating with us and for speaking a little bit more into the really amazing and important work you're doing. We don't have very much time for questions. Unfortunately, I've got a whole list here that I would love to get to, and I'm sure we could speak for hours. But given the fact that we have about 3 minutes left, I'd like for each of you, if you don't mind, just to say any closing remarks, maybe different ways that participants or members could get involved, or what you're looking most forward to in the upcoming year in terms of your advocacy and work. Just any final comments. We'll start with you, Marnie.
I guess I will say that it's really lovely to see the work of these other organizations. And something that really strikes me is, despite all having a core of nature conservation or biodiversity conservation, you can see how complex and how many sort of moving pieces there are in conservation, because conservation is really about people. It's not about, even though we showcase the animals that we love and that are important to the habitats, it's really about getting people on board more than anything else. And people are really hard to work with. Animals are much easier. So it's really complicated, takes a long time, but the efforts being done here are really wonderful. I'm glad to have been here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marnie. Isabella, we can go to you now.
Hi, everybody. I'm so grateful to celebrate this day and share our presentation. I'm really proud of our team, our communication team, and everyone that's helped us get to this point. And exactly, I have the same sentiments. It's so complex. There's so many things going into play. For example, in Colombia now, with the surge in conflict and difficulties that people are seeing and the way that it's affecting people's businesses, livelihoods, entire lives are being changed at this moment. Conservation is one of the most important things that we can do as human beings. And there are a lot of challenges that are affecting leaders right now. And being conscious of that this is a long-term goal. This is a marathon and it has to be done. Like Gladys has done 20 plus years of work. This is something that is never ending. And so that is so important to keep in mind, that this isn't just a 1 year or a project. This is a mission, and these are people's lives that we're talking about. So thank you so much for population, for supporting us through all of these trials and tribulations, and for giving us this moment to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella. It's really such an honor to get to partner with you and with Women for Conservation. Dr. Gladys?
Thank you so much. It's been really nice listening to Isabella and Manny. It's interesting how we have so many similarities in our approaches and how women become central to everything, which is really nice, because I didn't start out thinking of women. I started thinking of animals, gorillas, and the forest, and now women have become so central to keep things going. And I think everyone's beginning to realize that without gender equality, you're not really going to get a lot done, whatever you're doing with conservation and sustainable development. And one thing I can say is two very controversial topics is family planning, everyone confuses it in many countries, and conservation, because it's always seen as a human rights issue. You're displacing people for forests. But then when you bring in healthcare, when you bring in the fact that we're improving the health of people, everybody then warms up to family planning and they warm up to conservation. So that's one thing I've loved about implementing One Health. And yeah, I really feel there's still a lot we can do, and there's still a lot of ways that we can discover the potential of population health and environment approaches. And it's great that many more people are doing it, and many more conservation groups and public health groups are looking at health and conservation together, which is exciting. And thank you so much, Population Connection, for all the great support to us and everyone.
Absolutely. And we look forward to seeing where each organization is going this year and beyond. And we're just so happy to get to work together and to support these efforts. So